Hey, Internet. I feel like I need to start keeping track of standings for who's first. It's a nice mailbox. Uh, it's got graffiti all over it. I guess in the contemporary context, the more graffiti something has on it, the nicer people think it is. Um, it's a very artistic mailbox. So the definitions of what we consider art as a society have changed really radically since June. The things we're calling murals, things we're calling art now, changed a lot from what I learned in the museum. Random, she gets extra points. I'm first, and my wife is in the. Your wife is in the emergency room. What's your wife doing in the emergency room? I hope everything is okay. What's going on? But yes, you definitely get extra points for that. That sounds difficult. I hope all is well. It is never fun to go to the emergency room. I think I've been to the emergency room, or I could probably calculate how many times in my life I've been to the emergency room. She's had stomach pain since last night. Oh, that could be a lot of things. Stomach pain is a lot of things. Hey, Mike. Mike, what's going on? How are you doing? Thanks for stopping in. Stomach pain could be a lot of things. It could be appendicitis. She's not pregnant, is she? Could be a lot of things. Having no idea who she is or anything about her background or your life. I guess I really can't speculate, but I hope she's okay. Stomach pain seems potentially overcomable, so let me think about this. When was the last time I was in an emergency room? It's been a while. Pretty good, Mike. What brings you to us today, Mike? We're just kind of getting off the ground here for our daily duck stream. Extra bonus points is her birthday. Wow. So, Internet, why are you with us? Why aren't you helping her get over her stomach pain in the emergency room? So I'm thinking the last time I was in an emergency room, it was quite a while ago, actually. I'm thinking 2009, maybe. Jaswita says, "Hey, Land, was hoping you would start with a crazy accent." You know, Jaswita, I've been like so tied up with work, I forget like half the things I talk about on there sometimes. I have like so much Discord content to go back and catch up on. You guys have been racing ahead of me on there, and I will catch up to it. It probably won't be till early next week until I'm like really back in the saddle here. Mike says, I've been following you for some time, but usually it's full of people. What do you do usually? Mike, are you asking about like my career, or are you asking about our normal streams? I can answer both halves of that. But we're always glad to have more folks, Mike, so thanks for joining us. Okay, normal streams. Okay, Internet says if she's pregnant, we're going to have to go to the Maury Povich show. Well, that could be fun. You could become like national celebrities. Look on the bright side, Internet. Because in the time of coronavirus, I'm not even supposed to take my 11-year-old and sit in the emergency room. Oh yeah, how's the emergency room during COVID? That sounds like that could be challenging. Try not to get COVID while you're there. Mr. Shrektum says, hey, I'll hope you have a great weekend. Hey, Shrektum. Mr. Shrektum. What would Mr. Shrektum's first name be? I don't know. So Mike is asking about, so I got several things to sort of catch up on here. Mike's asking about our normal streams and what we normally cover. And then I got to go back and recount my history with the emergency room. So normal streams. Well, we've been on YouTube since 2006, believe it or not. We were one of the longest tenured YouTube channels that's out there. We were one of the original partner channels on YouTube, going way back. I really didn't do a whole lot with my YouTube channel for many years, although there are close to 1,000 videos on it. We started streaming daily back at the end of May. Was it the end of May or was it the end of June? I guess the end of May. Yeah, the end of May. We started streaming regularly. We're based in the heart of Washington, D.C. And I had been going out every day during coronavirus to check out the National Mall. And I noticed that the ducks on the National Mall were struggling. Their diet depends very much on tourists. And a lot of the ducks didn't have the tourists, and they were getting a little emaciated. So we started going out and feeding them periodically to kind of help them out. And then when the protests started, obviously DC took on a totally different tone. Things got really busy. We started streaming that every day. As things got really intense in DC, we got a week or two into that. We really needed a break. So we went and streamed some time feeding the ducks. And people seem to really enjoy that. So we've been going out pretty much every day since May, doing some combination of protests or ducks, either live protest coverage or live duck coverage. Or some days now we just do long walks and things like that. But we try to treat this like it's the bar and Cheers and just hang out a little bit, talk politics. We'll probably talk a lot of election stuff moving forward, and whatever other current events or other things are on your mind. So this can kind of be whatever you want it to be. So our normal stream, we don't really have a normal stream other than people seem to occasionally like to come and hang out with us. Mike says, might sound like a stupid question, ER is paid, right? You'd have to pay otherwise. Long walks, watch them, not do them. Okay, well, we go on like 10-mile walks, so those are pretty serious walks sometimes. The ER, so I've been at the ER when I didn't have insurance years ago, and you would have to pay out of pocket. It would often be pretty expensive, and many hundreds of dollars, if not thousands, to go to the ER out of pocket. If you have insurance, an ER visit is generally covered, but it depends on the nature and how your insurance policy is structured. Mike, where do you live? I'm curious. Nobody international can seem to figure out the American healthcare system. It is pretty complicated, but it has some upsides too. But you definitely want to have insurance, and you want to get the best policy for you in order so that you don't end up paying many hundreds of dollars every time you have to go to the emergency room. So my history with the emergency room, when I was a little kid, I went a lot because I used to crack my head open on things all the time because I had parents that didn't think it was a good idea to childproof the house because that would make it look less pristine. So I was cracking my head open left and right on like coffee table corners and all kinds of stuff like that. Might explain some things. Let me think. When did I start going to the emergency room a lot? When I was in the first grade, I cracked my chin open. I fell hard on some pavement as I was walking on a sidewalk just like this one. Fell chin first and had to go get 11 stitches. Let me think. When else have I been in the emergency room? There's a time when I was in college, I passed out in the middle of class. I had been sick for about a week or two. I was dehydrated. I passed out. They called 911. The ER docs came, took my pulse, found out my pulse was 220 beats a minute. I almost died, and they took me via ambulance literally across the street to the hospital, which was totally unnecessary, except that they then got to charge me for it. And they gave me 2 IV bags. So that was another time I went in the emergency room. I went to the emergency room once when I thought I had strep throat in the era pre-Minute Clinic, because that was kind of the only place you could go for treatment like that if you weren't around your home doctor. I think when else have I been to the emergency room? Oh, I got really sick. When I was a freshman in high school, I got really, really sick. I was out for a week, but I was really out for like 3 months. And I'd gone to the doctor, but I was still getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And eventually I went to the emergency room and ended up being, I don't know, got some super, super powerful antibiotics and ended up getting better. Accident prone? Like, guys, I'm talking like my entire life. This is not that many trips to the emergency room for the entire life. Okay, Mike is in the old EU. Okay, so presumably the UK. And what if you can't pay after? The emergency room cannot deny you service, and they can't force you to pay. So hospitals are really kind of screwed a lot of the time. They're kind of counting on people to pay. If you don't have the means, you can always go to the emergency room and always get treated, but you don't always have to pay. It's one of the loopholes in the American medical system. Bob Jones says, ouch, sounds like you're accident prone. Yeah, let me think. What else have I gone to the emergency room? Let me think. I feel like I've been to like emergency dental stuff a fair amount, but not that many trips to the emergency room, knock on wood. The emergency rooms are more like donation based. No, like, yeah, I mean, yes, technically they're kind of like, it's just that they're obligated to serve you whether you have insurance, whether you can demonstrate means to pay or not. If you don't have means to pay, then obviously you can't pay. They would like you to pay, but they can't force you. Yeah, they'll keep hounding you, but eventually, emergency rooms eat a lot of service that never gets paid for every year, and there's not really anything I don't know how aggressively they could pursue that legally. They usually don't. If your emergency room bill goes unpaid, you write them a letter saying you don't have the means to pay. Basically, they'll let you off the hook. Generally speaking, it's a messed up system. It's why it is good for people to have health insurance if they can afford it. Having health insurance obviously allows you to be covered on things like that, but it also costs money. And when people are young and healthy, they often feel like they don't want to spend that kind of money on health insurance. So that's why we have the big kerfuffle over Obamacare and whether there can be a national mandate for people to buy health insurance or not. Here, you pay only if you waste their time. So you have to go with like a legitimate medical condition. Well, Mike, it's a little bit disingenuous because everybody's paying for it. You're just paying for it through your taxes. The medical spending exists in every country. It's not like just because you're not paying for it, you're not paying for it. Medical care still costs money. Yeah, pay on the spot. It's designed to make medical care accessible to everyone. But at the same time, if you're somebody who doesn't get a lot of medical care, you end up paying for a lot of other people's medical care. Mr. Shrek says, nothing in life is free. Everything has a cost. Yes, it's just a matter of, do you want to pay a la carte or do you want to pay via your annual voluntary donation to the IRS? The invention of the Minute Clinic was such a great thing, that people don't have to go to the emergency room for every little thing, that there are now these smaller pop-up clinics everywhere in the CVS's and other, and I think most of the major healthcare systems have these sort of hybrid emergency care, if not emergency room kinds of spaces, urgent care. And actually now with COVID, they've all shifted so heavily toward being willing to do these video pop-ins where you can usually get an appointment within like 20 minutes, which is really convenient for a lot of things. I think it's a great evolution in the medical system that we're now able to do things like this and people can get care much more quickly, and it will bring the costs down ultimately. Jack says, then hospitals inflate the bill, write it off as losses on their taxes. Hospital bills are woefully inflated generally. You ever look at the itemized cost of your hospital bill, it can often be, you might get charged $100 for a single pill. And it might just be like an over-the-counter Lotrimin or something. Mike says, if you go for a scratch, you're wasting their time because someone with broken legs could come in and they would need more time to treat them because of you. Oh, hey, Orm. Glad to see you're back. Thanks for popping back. How are things going in Israel? Any new... I guess I hadn't really seen any headlines on any findings on Beirut today, but I'm curious to see where that is headed. But give us an update on what's going on over there. Mike says, I prefer paying in taxes for everyone than paying only for myself, honestly. So Mike, you like paying, is that because you use more than your fair share of services, or is it just because you like paying more money, or like what is it? Is it just sort of the collective mindset that you sort of find reassuring? And that seems to be sort of a sentiment amongst a lot of young people now. The idea that if we're all in this together, it's somehow reassuring to everybody. Random says, blue fire hydrant, they are red in Canada. I guess I haven't even paid any attention to the fire hydrants. Next one, I guess, yeah, there's one up here, it's blue. Yeah, Random, you're very observant. Just Sweeta says, finally POTUS is live. I didn't even know he was going live, Just Sweeta. What's he talking about today? Mike says, not because I use more, but because I could one day use more. Yeah, you like that. Mike, is that any different than buying insurance? I mean, insurance works the exact same way. It's just you're doing it through a private company instead of through the government. Trump is speaking now. But what is Trump saying? What is he speaking about? Why is he speaking? Just see as public health so far. Okay. I didn't know he was doing an address tonight or a press conference or whatever he's doing. He does have the best words. He has very excellent words. They are big words. They are beautiful words. The best words. They are the bigliest words sometimes. Sometimes they're not that bigly though. Sometimes he uses a lot of little words and just repeats them many times. So I went and I listened to a Joe Biden interview today just to see how well he does with his words and if he can actually challenge Trump on having the best words. Joe Biden actually has pretty good words. Like some of those clips where he totally goes into like can't seem to remember where he is mode get a lot of headlines, but he holds it together for most interviews and has pretty good words. Mr. Shrekip says, I'm in a neighboring state to land. Our fire hydrants are either red or painted in art. Mr. Shrekton, what neighboring state are you in? Your choices would be Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Kentucky, Indiana, or Michigan would be your choices. Mike says, I would be able to pay my grandpa medicine that really cost hundreds of thousands of euros. They're really close to dollars, so not much difference, that I couldn't pay without public health. But Mike, if your grandfather had insurance, that would work no differently here than it would there. The only difference is whether you want the government running that or whether you want a private company running that system. Okay, Lebanon is divided as usual. People don't believe the politicians. News from Israel that we developed a vaccine and we are moving from animal testing to human testing. Okay, so we still don't know what the deal is or what really caused the big explosion the other day. Lebanon's divided. Okay. Yeah, people don't believe the politicians. That's same here. News is we developed a vaccine. Yeah, I feel like that piece of news comes out like every day in every country, or every few days in every country, and then it kind of goes away. I don't know where these vaccines are actually headed. I'm still very skeptical on the vaccines. Um, New quick COVID test kits are developed here too. Yeah, I'm really skeptical about whether a vaccine is going to happen and whether it will actually work. I think we have a lot of good reason to think that it will probably never become real. Difference is hydrant colors signify how much pressure they are under, something like that. Is that true? I don't know anything about fire hydrants. Um, yeah, okay, so what are the colors different and what do they mean? Does a blue one mean like really explosive? Joswita says, Biden interview. Was that the one where he said that all blacks are the same, but Latino people are more diverse? I think actually Joswita, it was the same interview, the one with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. I didn't watch to see that particular line. But if you watch, if you listen to a lot of right-wing media, you start to get this impression that Joe Biden is like a walking corpse. He's not. He's not what he once was, but he's still very sharp. He's still very smart. I think Trump would really struggle against him in a debate. I think Biden is very smart. He just sometimes sort of zones out a little bit, which is part of the process of losing your mind. And then he says some stupid gaffes. So I think people are really overplaying the extent to which Joe Biden is losing his marbles. Mike says, well, I think I pay a lot less in taxes than I would pay with insurance in the U.S. Mike, do you have an itemized bill for like how much you pay in sort of cost of health coverage via the government versus what we would pay via insurance companies? I don't know. I've not seen that math in terms of just per capita, how much the U.S. spends on total health services versus what the U.K. spends. It might show that the U.S. is higher. But a lot of that in the U.S. goes toward medical innovation that by and large is heavily stymied in a lot of Europe. Anyway, it's for the common good. So just that, I think it's better. So that's what the sort of collectivist mindset. I mean, insurance is also for the common good. It's just it's a combination of whoever pays in would be who the insurance is good for. Bad says the death rate is too low to justify the risks of massive vaccination. I think this is one of these issues, COVID suddenly will sort of stop being top line news after the election. It's a significant thing, certainly. It's very significant, but it doesn't necessitate at this point frontline news coverage every single day. It's a thing that's out there, something everybody's got to watch out for. You got to wear a mask, be really prudent as an individual. I don't know what else there is really to say about it. And sort of constant news stories that talk about there are lots of COVID cases, like we know. Mike says, Germany has a lot of medical companies. That's right, that's true. Germany, Switzerland, there are a lot of pharmaceuticals in those countries. Joswita, the city picks the colors of fire hydrants here in Ohio. They are all different depending on what the city picks. Most small cities pick their high school team color. Joswita, you're reminding me of a lot of just kind of Ohio stuff. In Ohio, there's sort of an irrational fascination with high school football. I'll come back and talk about that if I can fill some dead time at some point. Bad says our military is ridiculously expensive and European companies don't spend nearly as much, so they can afford more social programs. Yeah, the US does spend an enormous amount per capita on military. Europe does not do that. Europe has a massive, massive social welfare state compared to what we have in the United States. So much so that it's crippling a lot of those countries, and will increasingly so as they continue to shift demographically from young people to old people, which is what's happening in Germany, and actually even outside of Europe, places like Japan are having that same issue, that they face really, really dire economic futures that nobody seems to be seriously confronting, because the people who are in charge right now are the people who are promoting the social welfare state. It's a really bad long-term situation for those countries. Difference is blue is 1,500 gallons per minute. Red is 500 gallons per minute. Well, I would think if you'd want 1,500 gallons per minute, that sounds better. I don't know what that means. It's a lot of gallons. One of those trash cans that you put out in the end of your driveway is usually about 32 gallons. So 1,500 gallons a minute's a lot. Random says, what's the best thing you found walking around? I found a roll of nearly $3,300 in an elastic band. Random, did you turn that in or did you keep it? I feel like that's one of those stories you hear about when you're a kid, about how like the good Samaritan would turn that in, the bad Samaritan would keep it. Bad says, countries, not companies. Okay. Michael says, do you have insurance? How much do you pay yearly? Michael, insurance in the United States is kind of complicated if you get it through your employer, which is what most people do here. Generally speaking, insurance will be covered for the most part by your employer. So when I get my paycheck every 2 weeks, there is an amount sort of indicated on the pay stub that has been basically that goes straight to my insurance company. So I never pay anything necessarily out of pocket. It gets deducted from my salary, and then it's matched by some amount the company itself pays, which of course, you know, comes out of the company's bottom line, which indirectly affects my salary. But by and large, people get their insurance through their companies. If I were to look at it directly based on how much comes out of my pocket and goes to the insurance company, it's a shockingly small amount, actually. It's like $14 every 2 weeks or something. It's really not very much. But I also have a relatively light insurance policy. I'm still relatively young and have sort of bet on my own health for the moment to select a policy that is a little bit leaner than I might need later on, or when I have a lot of kids. And that's one of the obviously benefits of insurance, is you can sort of pick what kind of policy you want, how much you want it to cover, how much you want it to not cover. There's sort of choice in that you wouldn't have if you were paying a sort of fixed fee set by the government. But the other complicating element of it is that it's really hard to sort of figure out exactly how much you're really paying. Okay. Josita says, yep, hometown proud. Obsessed with high school football. It's sort of fun, Josita. The challenge is you get some really provincial folks. And I think one of the challenges is, you know, getting folks to sort of balance the kind of local fixation with actually, you know, appreciating kind of bigger, more global things. Random kept it. Random, I'm disappointed in you. But Random, if you donate like half of it to the Duck Fund, I will very much applaud your efforts. I was going to say one other thing on Michael's question about insurance, but what was it? Trying to remember. Yeah, health insurance is complicated, certainly. Lucas is here. Hey, Lucas. I'm good. How are you? Hope all is well. Hope you're hanging in there this week, and it's a tough week for you. Different said, we're doing pretty well, though. I feel like we're just getting out of the gate, even though we've been on for 30 minutes. Different says, who would you turn it into? They would just pocket it. I guess as a kid, I was just taught you turn it into the police, but now we know the police are bad guys. So I don't know who you turn it. Maybe you probably want to turn it into your local vigilante justice force. So go down to your local Antifa office and turn it in there, and they'll probably do the right thing with it. Mike says, well, but what if you're jobless and get hit by a car? Well, Mike, you don't have to get your insurance via your employer. If you become jobless, then one of the things that's tough about the United States is you have to quickly scramble and go purchase your own health insurance. Usually your health insurance through your employer would stick around through the end of the month when you get laid off. But once after that point, you have to go get your own insurance policy. Under Obamacare, it was mandatory nationally that you had to own insurance. So everybody had to go out and buy insurance from some company, or they could go through the national exchanges and buy insurance company through healthcare.gov on the website, which was basically forced companies to put together a range of policies. You sort of pick one, and they had to be forced to cover you. So under that regime, if you didn't have health insurance, you would pay a $95 fee or $195 fee every year. Since Trump has been in office, Trump has undone the mandate that you have insurance, so you don't have to have insurance anymore. If you were to not have a job, not have insurance, and get hit by a car, you would be rushed to the emergency room and treated. In that case, if you did have means, you would probably try to pay as much of that out of pocket as possible. You would probably negotiate with the hospital. You might hire a lawyer to act on your behalf and help them bring the cost down, because the hospital's trying to get any money they can get. And if they send you a $30,000 bill and all you can pay is $1,500, then the hospital would rather have the $1,500 than have nothing. So you can certainly negotiate with them. Hospital prices are very negotiable. But if you don't have insurance, that's kind of what you get stuck doing. But generally speaking, it's very smart to have insurance. Bad says emergency rooms can't turn you away, so a lot of people end up making a huge bill and never paying it. That's what we were talking about at the outset. It's the fact that if you don't have insurance, the emergency room is obligated by law to treat you, and they will. And then they figure out how to deal with the finances after that. And if you can't pay or you don't pay, pretty much they at some point will stop pursuing the bill and just write it off. And then they'll get a tax break for basically unpaid emergency room bills. But that's a big issue with hospitals, certainly. What if you need a long-term cure? Well, if you're jobless, I would consider that you can't pay for it. You can't, well, I mean, Michael, just because you don't have a job doesn't mean you don't have to pay for things. Like, whatever you buy in life, you still have to pay for. I mean, you buy food, it doesn't really matter whether you have a job, you still have to pay for the sandwich. Just being jobless does not negate your obligation to pay for services that other people provide. Otherwise, it's not fair to the people providing the services. Why would somebody want to give you away a free sandwich just because you happen to be out of work? What's in it for them to do that? What's in it for a hospital to give you medical care just because you happen to not have a job? That's free health care that some doctor is then giving away for free. Why should he be forced to do that? Like, says, what if you need a long-term cure? Well, if you need a long-term cure, like then you'll keep racking up medical bills. I mean, the same way you would anywhere. You would get long-term treatment then. Mr. Shreckham says, my wife literally didn't want health insurance, so we paid the tax fine because it was a lot cheaper than a policy. Yeah, I don't remember exactly how many Americans opted that route. That was a case that went to the Supreme Court at least once, maybe twice, to assess whether or not it was legal for the government to basically charge a tax, an involuntary fee on people for not voluntarily purchasing a product. Supreme Court decided, because it was something with the Interstate Commerce Clause, that it was legal for the government to levy that fee, which was a big win for Obama at the time. Obviously, now that Trump has gotten rid of the individual mandate, it's not as big of an issue. Different paid the fine too. Interesting. Mike says, so why people pay insurance company if they can go to the ER? Well, Mike, because generally people would rather do things the legal way than try to get around things illegally. Just because you might get away with it doesn't mean it's not going to be unpleasant for you to try to get away with purchasing free healthcare or getting free healthcare. You know, the same reason anybody would go buy something from a store as opposed to steal from a store. That says, get disability. My dad is disabled. He was able to get surgery and money for expense and stuff. Yeah, that's another point that I guess we haven't brought up, is that it's not like the government doesn't have programs for people that can't afford insurance. The government has extensive programs in the United States. Disability is one of them. I've done a lot of work in low-income communities. Almost everyone in a community like that gets disability, which is a subsidy program by the government if you can demonstrate you have some kind of disability that requires long-term care. Mike's saying, I'm not saying that you shouldn't pay. What if you can't? Well, then you don't. I mean, the same way with any product. I mean, if you can't pay for it, then you don't pay for it. If you have no money in your pocket, your choices are either don't buy a sandwich, steal the sandwich, or somehow get some money to pay for the sandwich. Those are the choices you have. The government makes a lot of resources available to help people pay for health care. It's just not covered federally and automatically. Charity hospitals, said Bad. It's another option, especially for kids. Many charity hospitals and organizations. Okay, that's a good point. Mike says, well, but it's not like you're stealing. I'm speaking of life-saving meds. If you can't get them, you'll die, probably. Well, we've given you a lot of options. I mean, you're painting a more and more extreme picture of somebody. Probably something that's fairly unrealistic. If they've have all of these qualifying conditions, then some of the various methods that we're talking about will apply to them, and they'll be able to pay for it. I don't know what the productivity is of sort of trying to come up with more and more extreme and unusual and sort of unlikely examples. Brad says pill fraud used to be a thing, but you can't steal heart surgery. Prepare for the worst? Yeah, that's why you should buy insurance, is prepare for the worst. What if you're in the UK and you don't pay your taxes? Do you still get health insurance? Or do you still get health care? I would assume they still have to cover you. I mean, that's the same situation. If you don't pay your taxes in the United Kingdom because you don't have the money, well, then you're probably going to get in trouble for not paying your taxes. I think the question that it ultimately comes down to that I think they would still treat you. Yeah, as they would here. I mean, the emergency room is still going to treat you here. Hospitals and doctors tend to operate under the Hippocratic Oath. Generally they exist to treat people. The doctors, actually shockingly so, doctors are usually not very up to speed on how the finances of their offices work. They exist to treat people and make them better. And if they can do that, they will. Somebody else will handle the billings. I mean, the question ultimately that comes down to here is for people that don't want to pay for health care, should they still be covered on the backs of everyone else? Most countries in Europe have decided that people who don't want to pay for their own health care will be covered on the backs of everyone else who will. In the United States, we effectively have decided the same thing. It's just a much more complicated process and a little bit less direct. Mr. Schreckson says, Trump just mentioned an executive order that health insurance companies will have to treat pre-existing conditions. Well, yeah, that's been an ongoing challenge in the United States, is for people with pre-existing conditions. So, something that may have continued to affect somebody their entire life that we know about. We know it's going to incur medical costs. To what extent is an insurance company obligated to pay for their medical services? The government requires a lot out of insurance companies. It's obviously not in the insurance company's best interest necessarily to provide provide a policy where they know they're going to be paying out more than they're taking in from somebody. But the government does mandate this for the sake of protecting vulnerable people. It causes everyone else's health insurance to become more expensive, but that's a gambit we have decided is in our best interest collectively. Does the ER do surgery? Well, if you need surgery in an emergency, certainly the ER can do surgery. Depends what kind of surgery it is. If it's an elective surgery, no, the ER is not going to do that. You would want to find a doctor and schedule a time to have that surgery. Bad says the nurses take the Florence Nightingale oath. What is the Florence Nightingale oath? Random says, in America, it is really easy to get money for your blood. In Canada, we donate it, and it's illegal to buy and sell blood. You can get some money for donating blood in the United States. I think that's a thing. That happens. Bad says the ER will treat kids with an earache. People use it as a doctor's office. Yeah, we were talking about sort of the... I mean, it's a good thing that some of these things like the Minute Clinic, urgent care, etc. have popped up around the country. They fill a middle ground between your regular doctor and the emergency room, so the emergency rooms aren't overrun with people with earaches. It's also very helpful if you're out of town and you have, say a sore throat. You don't need to be spending a big emergency room bill on fairly small coverage like that. Bat says, we didn't sell blood, we can sell plasma. Hey, Democrat lady, thanks for joining us. You didn't email me. I was hoping for an email about the cats. Let us know the status of the cats, for sure. So, Mike, obviously there's a lot of controversy around the U.S. healthcare system. That's why it's been a big issue politically for many years. I think there are a lot of people that would like to see the U.S. go the way of Europe and have a single-payer government system. That tends to be a pretty left-wing position here. There are people that want to force you to buy insurance, which is basically what Obamacare was. There are people that want a public option, which is basically everyone who isn't on insurance would be sort of insured automatically by the government. That would be most similar to the EU or the UK model. The UK model is essentially like having the public option, because in the UK, unlike Canada as much, a lot of people who can afford it don't use the NHS for a lot of services because the NHS is kind of crappy. And then there are people in the US who like the system the way it is and think it's good to have a different model than other parts of the world, and that it drives medical innovation. So that's also a position. So there are a lot of different positions out there on US healthcare. It's just, it achieves a lot of the same things, it's just different. Dr. Phil is not a real doctor, says Random. I went to Dr. Phil once for an earache. He just yelled at me. Michael says, I prefer paying now in taxes because maybe someday I'll need a life-saving surgery and meds and would not be able to afford them. The rest of the country will have my back. Okay, that's Michael, I hear you. It's just you could pay insurance in the same way and it'd be the exact same thing. It would just probably be a little bit cheaper for you. Democrat lady says, oh, sorry, my son was sick today. Oh, no. Well, I hope your son is doing well. I feel like we're having a lot of doctor talk today because everybody seems like they're sick. People in the emergency room. Something's going on. Bad says, the Florence Nightingale oath. I solemnly pledge myself before God in the presence of this assembly to pass my life in purity and to practice my profession faithfully. I will abstain from whatever is deleterious and mischievous and will not take or knowingly administer any harmful drug. So it's splitting hairs a little bit. The Hippocratic Oath and I guess the Florence Nightingale Oath sounds similar. Both have powered medical care and medical innovation around the world for many centuries, and by and large I think it would be safe to say that medical care in the West these days is pretty darn good. I don't know how much better it theoretically could be, but it's pretty darn good compared to whatever it's been elsewhere in the history of the rest of the world. So it's splitting hairs a little bit to complain about those oaths. My general complaint with the Hippocratic Oath is that because it's from an era when information was very exclusive, it continues to position the doctor as a sort of expert that is almost unquestionable. In other words, the doctor is bound by oath not to give you certain drugs, for instance, and to treat you in a certain way. In some ways, I would prefer the healthcare marketplace operate more like a marketplace. I'm generally quite good at sort of assessing what condition I have, and often just would like fewer barriers between me and getting the medication or the treatment that I think I need. Doctors are notoriously untransparent about communicating with patients, about their diagnoses and about the treatments they would suggest. I wish it were easier to sort of self-treat. That's dangerous, obviously, for a lot of folks. I wish I could go to the doctor's office, look at a menu, see exactly how much everything costs, and then pick out what I would like as a service. Unfortunately, doctors generally have very little idea of how much something actually costs. If you ever go to your doctor and they suggest a treatment and you ask them how much it costs, the answer you'll generally get is, "Oh, don't worry, your insurance covers it." Well, that's not good enough. That's the problem with any insurance scheme or any government-run healthcare scheme, is there's no accountability to costs. People are not making decisions based relative to their cost. When you remove accountability for decision-making relative to cost, that's how costs skyrocket. If the doctor or you decide that you need some treatment and it's free regardless of what it is, why not pick the most expensive treatment imaginable, especially if the doctor still makes money based on the actual cost of the product? It's one of the major flaws in the US healthcare system. It's an even bigger flaw in European healthcare, that nothing is accountable to cost. As opposed to going to a single payer or insurance or government-run healthcare system, I think there's a viable argument to go the reverse direction, to make people actually be accountable for the costs of their individual treatments much more directly. Okay, Mike says, okay, just wanted to know, just an opinion though, okay. WH, Highland. Hey, WH. Thanks for joining us. I like the new thumbnail. Yeah, thanks, WH. We made a bunch of them a couple weeks ago. I got to make some more now. If anybody has pictures, any content you'd like to see in the thumbnails for the stream, let me know. I'd love to use people's pictures, anything else. And if you have any ideas for how to sort of best market the stream via the thumbnails, let me know that too, because I want to know sort of what convinces you guys to click on this stream or any other. Random says, I think it would be fun to visit a witch doctor with voodoo dolls. I don't know that would be that fun, Random. Mike says, well, if I don't have to pay for it, I don't care for the cost. If it costs more, but works better, why not? Well, Michael, if everyone makes that same decision, it's going to cost the country 3 times as much for collective health care as it would otherwise. You're still going to pay 3 times as much. You're just going to pay it through your taxes. Or if you don't pay it, somebody else will. The point is the collective cost of health care skyrockets when you remove accountability for the costs. In fact, it just creates a lot of corruption where doctors can make a lot of money. Our system is set up for doctors to be able to charge things, to be able to recommend treatments and rake in lots and lots of money from them without the patient ever even knowing how much the treatment is going to cost. What other industry do we have where the doctor gets to decide what you're going to buy and how much it costs and doesn't get to tell you the cost and you don't get any say in whether you buy it? It's a kind of crazy system when you think about it. Imagine if we treated any other part of the world like this. Imagine you went into the grocery store and the employees of the grocery store take a look at you and they decide what you're going to buy. They decide how much they're going to charge you for it. They don't tell you either thing. You sign on the dotted line, and then suddenly, a month and a half later, you get a bill for whatever the treatment cost. It's a crazy system. Bad says, it's cool having a nurse for a mom. My grandma was also a nurse. I got a lot of home treatments as a kid. There's still cash doctors in some places. So, Bad, tell me more about that. What was it like growing up with a doctor or a nurse in your immediate family? I did not grow up with doctor parents. I'm curious what that experience is like. Is it better because you get really good treatment? Is it worse because they're constantly sort of looking over the shoulder? What is that experience like? Mike says, also, I don't think here the doctor get paid based on the medicine they give you. They get paid on the public administration based on many patients they have. Yes, Mike, I think that's right. In most of Europe, that's generally how it is. Doctors get paid less in Europe, broadly speaking, and there's a lot less relationship between sort of how well they do and how much they get paid. It's a lot more like a civil service job. As we know in the United States, civil service jobs, by and large, create the least productive employees because there is so little relationship between providing good or innovative service and what you get paid. So it's a landing point for some very good people, but also a lot of lazy people. I think one of the things I have been astonished by in the United States in talking to a lot of doctors is how little most really understand about the finances of even their own offices, much less sort of the general industry. There is certainly reform needed in the medical profession. I think it would be much better if doctors understood more about the finances of what they're selling, as opposed to the sort of intentional nature of medical education, which keeps doctors sort of out of the loop in understanding how the finances of the profession work. Sort of philosophically, most folks in the profession want doctors to kind of only be focused on, the practicing the art of medicine. In the reality is it's a business for everyone else. I mean, everyone who goes to visit the doctor is treating this as both a relationship between the care they get and also how much money they're going to spend on it. Healthcare is not free. Shrektim says, I'm watching a protest stream and it sounds like the arrests are starting early tonight in Illinois. Where in Illinois is the protest stream, Mr. Shrektim, and why are people being arrested? Bad says, I never got taken to the hospital over minor things, and my mom always had medical grade supplies around. She actually stitched my knee once, stuff like that. Well, that's pretty cool. I guess that would be nice. I don't know how much of that is like technically legal, but that is nice. I don't know, Bad, did you ever get prescriptions that way as a kid? I know that's like a very controversial thing, is when doctors sort of give personal favors in prescriptions to their family members. Mike says, then I don't know, I never paid insurance, never been to the US. Could be a paradise, I won't know for now as long as COVID is rocking there. Well, yeah, I mean, you kind of, you have the system of the place you live. So, this is what we have for now. I don't think it's going to change wholesale anytime soon. Obamacare was a huge lift. I don't know. That was a huge lift. That Obama had all three chambers of government. He had the presidency, he had a supermajority in the Senate, and he had an overwhelming majority in the House. And it still exhausted all of his first 2 years of political capital to get Obamacare passed. Clinton failed to get Hillary passed in the early 90s. Passing insurance reform, which is basically what Obamacare was, and passing the individual mandate as part of that bill was a huge lift. And I don't know that any president in the near future is going to tackle that as their primary issue in the near term. So I don't know if the U.S. system is going to change just from a pragmatic standpoint anytime soon, other than sort of tinkering around the edges. So by and large, if you move to the U.S., probably you would have to deal with an insurance-based system. And, that is what it is. Random says, heroin and cocaine used to be prescribed back in the old days before the harmful effects were found out about it. Okay, interesting, Random. So Shrektim says Rockford. Okay. Bad says, my grandma was really old school. She made me drink hot water and honey when I got a cold. Does that help? I feel like water helps everything. I feel like if you drink enough water, you'll get better from almost anything you have. That's probably not true, but it always feels like drinking water, if you're sick, does wonders. Rockford, Illinois, home of the Rockford Peaches from A League of Their Own, starring Rosie O'Donnell. Interesting. Why is there such a big protest in Rockford? Rockford's not even a very big place. Being arrested for being in the street and stopping traffic. Yeah, why Rockford? Any idea? Yeah, being in the street and stopping traffic, I mean, I guess it's not violent, but it is illegal. And it's certainly disruptive. It's very rude. Bad says my grandma. Okay, yeah, old school. Yeah, Bad. You have a whole family of doctors. Are you a doctor yourself, or anything related? Like, also, do you have your mask with you? Yes, I do, Michael. I have my mask on my face right now. Bad says stitching a cut at home is legal. Loading and stuff is legal. Okay. Random says Sherlock Holmes did drugs to help him solve crimes. Yeah, for some reason our PBS channels here in the United States are full of British TV at our taxpayer expense, and there's both a historic and a sort of modern Sherlock Holmes show on there, and I think they get a little bit into that even on there. I don't know why our public television in the United States is so full of British shows. It seems odd to me that that would be what we're paying our taxes on. Bad says I had my tonsils and adenoids taken out, and I broke my foot, so it's not like I didn't go to the hospital. Okay, fair enough, Bad. That's those are pretty big adventures. I've never had my tonsils taken out. I don't even know what adenoids are, so I assume I haven't had those taken out. I'm scared to death of someday getting appendicitis. That seems pretty miserable. Although I've sort of been up close and personal with people who've had appendicitis before. That's pretty miserable. I don't know if I've ever been around somebody who had their tonsils out, though. Random says, I don't think Sherlock Holmes was a real person. Yeah, Random. So I was reading a poll, I don't know, a while back, where they polled, I think, British people on what was the funniest joke of all time. And it was this joke about Sherlock Holmes and Watson going on a camping trip together. And they go into the woods and I guess set up shop for the night. And I guess at some point they have their campfire, you know, they do all the, maybe they make s'mores, all that kind of stuff, and eventually go to sleep. And at some point around 3 in the morning, Watson wakes up Sherlock Holmes and says, Sherlock, look up. Look up at the sky. Look at all those stars up there. What do you see? And what can you conclude? And Sherlock Holmes looks up and says, you know, Watson, in all my years of solving mysteries, one of the things I've concluded is the universe is a gigantic place, and it's almost inevitable that one of those stars houses other life. And what a remarkable universe we live in. And this is really inspiring to look up at those stars. I think my main conclusion is that the universe is an amazing place. And Watson replies with something like, Sherlock, I think what you're supposed to conclude is that somebody took our tent. I'm probably mistelling the joke a little bit, but anyways, that was apparently the most funniest joke of all time, according to some British poll. Mike said, I was thinking that the other day. I thought the U.S. had no public TV. Mike, the U.S. has public TV. It's just terrible. It's just really bad. It's because it's government run, it's just not very good, which is the case with most government things in the United States. They have a little bit of news programming that's very boring and generally sort of very one-sided. They used to have a program called The News Hour with Jim Lehrer. Jim Lehrer is the guy who notoriously moderated the first 2012 presidential debate and did a horrible job at it. But they used to joke about that show that at first it was a half-hour show, and nobody realized it was only a half-hour show because it was so boring everyone thought it was an hour. Yeah, PBS does pretty bad news programming. Doesn't all cops are B, AAR, ACAB, ACAB, ACAB. They also do a lot of shows, but the shows tend to be things like Downton Abbey gets on our public television. So the benefit of public television in the United States is that there are parts of the country where that's the only media that some people can access. The downsides of it are it's terrible and we have to pay for it with our tax dollars, even though it's terrible and doesn't provide particularly useful programming to anybody. But no, we don't have government state TV in the way that other countries do. Other than that, we have the NPR, National Public Radio, which is also government subsidized and similarly quite boring. Bad says, I worked with people that went to the hospital for really minor things. That's all I'm saying. Yeah, well, I hope they're now not going to the hospital. I hope they're going and getting some kind of video treatment or something like that. You can do a lot at home. Yeah, certainly. I think, again, the sort of democratization of medical care in the United States has been a really good thing. The urgent cares, the minute clinics, the tele appointments, the video appointments and whatnot. I think it's great. I think it really helps solve a lot of that stuff and will bring costs down. By the way, you guys are watching Land Speculation on YouTube. I really appreciate the likes and the subscribes. We are going for a little walk today here downtown. We were out with the ducks yesterday. Said hi to our pekin friend. We'll see where we end up today. In the description, there is a link to our duck Discord if anybody wants to join that. If you want to chat offline and get into any more detail about some of these topics. We got a pretty good group there now that's been talking a lot the last few days. In addition, there's a link to the Duck Fund, which is a PayPal link in case anybody wants to help support the ducks or in our activities with them. So I really appreciate the donations to that. That's the primary way we fund and support this stream. So appreciate everyone who has donated to that so far. And just generally appreciate you guys all joining us on a regular basis. You guys make this much more enjoyable experience for me, being able to talk to you guys. So appreciate all the comments and the thoughts here. Michael says, I need to get some medical kits to bring around in case. What do you mean medical kits to bring around? Bad says, I love looking at the stars. Bob Jones says, what's up? Hey, Bob. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Mike says, I approve that public TV is not very good, at least here. I watch BBC content where I can find it. I remember being in the UK. There's some interesting shows there. I feel like all the TV stations were some BBC and then a number, like BBC 6, BBC 7. But I don't know. It just, something about having the government run all your TV seems a little disconcerting. MC says, PBS in America had Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers back in the day. Yeah, I don't know. Are those both? Mr. Rogers, I know, is off the air, but is Sesame Street still on the air? 11 says the Trump supporters that say, leave America if you don't love it, don't realize that many would leave if other countries had easier options for to immigrate legally and the financial means to do so, says 11. 11, there's a fair amount of study by McKinsey and other companies on sort of what would happen if everybody had open borders and sort of where the global population would shift. Overwhelmingly, the global population would shift to the United States, and the U.S. would be overrun to the tune of about 1 billion people in fairly short order. And, that wouldn't really be a good thing for the U.S. because it would cripple all of the U.S. systems. There are certainly probably people who would happily leave the U.S. There are certainly substantially more people who would like to come here. U.S. is never going to satisfy everyone, nor is any country. Moving between countries is hard for good reason, and generally, giving people choices and trying to make the best of where you are, rather than kind of unendingly complaining about it, is probably the best way to move forward. You can find ways to improve it, all the better. Like it says, Medikit to put in a car. Is that like a first aid kit, Mike? I've never heard the term Medikit. She says, POTUS over. He's going to do an executive order for unemployment help, mortgage and rent help with no evictions, and some kind of tax break. Reporter asked where the dollar is coming from. Answer, you will see when it happens. Yeah, Trump doesn't seem too concerned about the national debt. It's one of the reasons his administration has been very able to accomplish a lot of things. He sort of spends like a Democrat, but, does a lot of policies that are sort of all over the place. So, clearly he's doing some things here to try to curry favor with the electorate, it sounds like. Mortgage rent help and no evictions. He's putting a lot of pressure on landlords there. So I hope whatever the help is does in fact coincide with the no evictions policy. Forcing people to not evict people who aren't paying certainly doesn't help the landlord in any way. MC says, big if. Bob Jones says, lol, you are funny. But thanks for joining us, 11. Good to see you. MC says, America is the shining light on the hill for freedom. I think there are a lot of people that would like to see America join the rest of the world in a lot of things. I don't know that having the entire world all doing the same thing is always a good thing. Sometimes it might be good to sort of keep some experimental test cases out there that aren't doing exactly what everyone else is doing for the sake of breaking the echo chamber of what constitutes good policy. Sophia said, why would they come to the USA? Far left says it's such a bad place. Well, as bad of a place as it is, we've done this study. I've talked about it before. I talked about it when I was back in Washington. We've looked at every single country in the world and what people earn in those countries versus what people with ancestry from those countries earn living in the United States. Of approximately 200 countries in the world, 197 of them, people do substantially better off living in the United States than if they lived in their ancestral country or immigration country of origin. In most cases, the increase that people make living in the United States is dramatic, to the tune of $30,000 to $40,000 a pop. In some cases, it's even greater than that. Generally speaking, if you, for instance, relative to most countries in Africa, African Americans earn between 8 and 20 times living here what they would in a typical African country. Compared to Europe, most European Americans earn substantially more in the United States than they would have earned in Europe, although the gap is smaller. Same is true for most Asian countries, most of the Middle East. There are 3 exceptions globally. One of them is Ireland. People earn more in Ireland than Irish Americans earn in the United States. And in Singapore, immigrants from Singapore earn less in the United States than they earn in Singapore. The other one is another small country. I can't remember which one. But by and large, the premise that the United States is bad for people is only so if measured against a sort of utopian vision. Measured against a reality, the evidence is overwhelming. The United States is very good for people. It affords them quantifiably better quality of life almost across the board than does any other country. Mike says, unpopular opinion, most people would move to the US because it's better, but in some cases it's not the best option in every case. But I can see a lot of people coming and moving there if they could. Well, certainly no country is going to be the best for everybody. Some countries are going to be better for other people, for people, and when you got 350 million people living in a single place, it's unlikely that that's going to be the best place for every single one of them. So, if people aren't happy where they are, they should sort of think about how to make that situation better for themselves. And if it comes down to it, maybe look at other options, because there are ways to emigrate between countries. Sometimes they're just complicated. Internet says, Trump just smoked the media. Internet, is that what the media is going to say? Because the media doesn't usually seem to agree. David says, money printer, go brr. Yeah, we're definitely testing the bounds of modern monetary theory here. There is a pretty large body of theory emanating from the Elizabeth Warren wing of the sort of political landscape that essentially the idea of debt being a problem is a made-up problem, and that you can basically spend into oblivion, and it actually won't drive out-of-control inflation. We will see if that's the case, but certainly we are doing our best to spend as much money as we can, as quickly as we can, which is sort of a fun adventure. Bob Jones says, Trump does not have a choice, thanks to the Democrats that you created. Wait, I created them? Wait, Bob, who said I created them? I think they pre-existed my life. Mike says, yeah, first aid kit. I was thinking about Medikit, because medical plus kit. Medikit, but yeah, it's a first aid kit. Okay. Fair enough. Yeah, I just hadn't heard the term medikit, but interesting. Bob said, who said we were bad? Difference says every leftist on earth. A lot of French philosophers in the 1960s said we were bad and invented a lot of tactical methodologies by which to try to sort of undermine Western economies, and those are very popular right now. Jaswita says, the USA is an amazing place with our freedoms and Constitution of capitalism. Yeah, let's not get carried away. I mean, there are a lot of good countries out there that offer people a lot of good options. Bob Jones says, absolutely, we're a country of immigrants. Bob Jones says, no, is what Different said. People do not earn more in Ireland, says Bob. You need to recheck all your data. No, Bob, I'm not. The data is what it is. I mean, I'm not joking about the data there. Mike says, I would move to the U.S. if it adapted some changes. What kinds of changes would cause you to move to the U.S., Mike? I'm curious what your thoughts are. The internet says reparations for the Irish. Well, you know, if we need some sort of demonstrable proof that the U.S. has created bad conditions for people, there are 3 countries, again, that have a claim to really asserting that they're worse off in the United States than the country of their origin. One of those is Ireland, one is Singapore, and I can't remember the third one. So, you know, maybe those are the 3 countries we should look at. 11 says, I can see why people come here from third world countries like India, Brazil, African countries, much better here. But I think there's countries that are much more free than America. So we've got a whole big party out here for Black Lives Matter in front of the City Hall here in Columbus, Ohio. The Black Lives Matter flag. Black lives will always matter. John Lewis, R.I.P. All right. So, I mean, there are a lot of indices that try to measure economic freedom, social mobility, etc. The U.S. is usually very high on them, but 11 is correct that the U.S. is not often number 1 on those kinds of lists. The U.S. does suffer from reduced economic mobility today than it had in the past, although it's still very high on a global scale. Generally, depending on how an organization measures aggregate freedom, the U.S. is not necessarily number 1. But I don't know that a lot of those methodologies are totally accurate, are totally appropriate either. It's, you know, I think where people feel the most free is sort of a judgment, and it's very possible that some people may feel more free in other places. One of the challenges of the U.S. is that we are by far the largest multicultural democracy on earth, and that is very difficult to achieve. There are very, very few countries, if you can name countries, that are less than 75% homogenous, that end up being as successful as the United States, and that's a great testament to us that we've been able to achieve that, integrating many different cultures around a set of shared values. So don't take that lightly. And it says, what country is more free than America? Bob Jones says no. He says, remember, I am in Ohio, hometown proud and country proud. Jaswita, the Dayton area is pretty left-wing, though. 11 says, a lot of ethnocentrism on here. America's not the center of the universe. 11, what's the ethnocentrism? What's your data? You sound very fuzzy. Are you talking about me, Bob, or are you talking about 11? MC says, no country is more free than America, not even if you could buy your own island nation. So getting data on what Americans earn by immigrant group is actually very difficult. It's very difficult, especially since America stopped supporting the American Community Survey, which was an extension of the census that used to exist That has actually been discontinued just in the last few years. It's one of the things I'm not particularly happy about Trump eliminating. But it used to provide really good data, broken down by ethnicity or country of origin, or country of ancestry. Differences: American isn't an ethnicity. Mike says, to be honest, I'm not even going to start on freedom because I'm going to say, not regret that. All America is the most free nation, yada, yada, yada. You can do most stuff in a lot of EU nations. You have to go through more bureaucracy. That's actually a pretty fair way of describing it, Mike. I do think there's sort of an overzealous zeal for among Americans to sort of characterize America as a super free country, and heads and tails better than a lot of other countries. I think a lot of the difference is bureaucracy. A lot of the difference is how extensive is the social welfare state. America has a lot of it. We just don't have it quite as much as some countries do. Certainly I think one of the biggest things you realize as an American, if you go spend substantial time in Europe, and I have done that, is that there is a hell of a lot more red tape and paperwork, and sort of government oversight and management of everything. In the US, we would call that the nanny state. In Europe, they would call that sort of the normal way of doing things. And they sort of think that Americans are wild cowboys. And it kind of depends, what your preference is. Bob said, good, go into the party. Really, I don't care. Okay, Bob, I'm losing you here. It says America is the center of the universe. Bob Jones says we have the Declaration of Independence. That says it really depends on the state, too. Bob? And why would you want that? Okay, Bob, I don't know what's going on. I might be on top chat. Is that what's going on? Bob, I don't know what's going on with you, but you're sort of rambling here. Bad says Thomas Jefferson himself said the Declaration of Independence had served its purpose, and all men are created equal was not a broad statement about multiculturalism. Okay, I don't know, Bad, what are you insinuating there? It was a reference to equality of the colonists, and the king. By and large, I don't really care that much about what Thomas Jefferson intended in the 18th century. I think I'm generally not an originalist when it comes to some of these documents. I don't think trying to propagate a 17th century economy is very prudent for us, and I think Thomas Jefferson, by and large, was actually one of the weaker statesmen of that era. Bob Jones says, you seem to be not happy about Trump talking. Bob Jones says, we are the home of the free. Yes. Okay, Bob, I'm getting a lot of, you're putting a lot of exclamations in here. I don't know, I don't know what your yes is in reference to. Like it says, I would say the U.S. are comparable to a lot of EU nations. EU is just more bureaucratic. Yeah, I think that's fair. Generally speaking, the U.S. opens up a little bit more business freedom, and that results in sort of generally slightly higher wages and earnings in the U.S. But, in a lot of ways, they're very similar, certainly. Mike says, also, you asked the few things I would change about America. Bob says, oh my God, you are joking. We have no comparison to Europe. Bob, there's plenty of comparison between the United States and Europe. I don't know what you mean, no comparison. Bad says, Thomas Jefferson would have objected to the Constitution if he had been in the country at the time. He was in France, and they didn't let him until it was passed. Well, I don't know, Bad. I mean, the Constitution's what we got. I don't really know what impact that has, whether Thomas Jefferson was or was not a supporter of it. It's the governing document of our country. Bob says, okay. I mean, the U.S. and Europe the European nations, by and large, have sort of followed the governance model of the United States. Most of the countries have gotten online. Since the fall of the Soviet Union, most of Eastern Europe has come online and seen explosive growth. there aren't that many countries in Europe that seem to be, substantially different than the United States. I think one of the differences is that the countries that sort of most recently have seen the oppression that results from when you veer too hard in the other direction seem to have a, broader sort of cultural appreciation for some of the freedoms and the sort of capitalist ethics of the United States, whereas a lot of Western Europe, a lot of stuff's not so popular. Bob says, land. Nope, I live in Europe. Okay. Like I said, I would say, number one, public health care. I'm used to it. Maybe private is just as good. Two, more larger party. You would call me mad, but in this case, I believe having only two parties to vote is not freedom. So, Michael, I hear you on that. I'll talk about that in a moment, because I think a lot of people sort of misinterpret what the U.S. parties are. Bad says, I get that. The Constitution is what we have, but it certainly wasn't a unanimous decision. I wouldn't think anything would be a unanimous decision, Bad. I mean, very rarely are things that get governed unanimous. Different says, Europe is basically the USA for sissies. Bob says, but I'm an American. So you're an American living in Europe. So Bob, remind me where in Europe you are? Michael says, I know you have more parties, but at the end you always end with the Republic. Yeah, so Michael, I would not think of American political parties in the same way that Europe thinks of political parties. European political parties are parties that sort of pretty narrowly represent particular factions and ideas. What the US has is basically a sort of eternally moving line that represents sort of the center ethic of the country. And the parties sort of push that line in different directions and then generally navigate back toward that line. So you have, over the last century and a half, a remarkably equal split, if you look at all levels of government, between the two parties that exist. The parties don't necessarily exist to represent pure ideologies. What the parties represent to exist is sort of a left and right of a center line. It wouldn't make sense to introduce another party into that system because the idea of representing that center line would get lost. I think what's disconcerting to a lot of people who consider themselves centrists is that by and large, neither party seems to directly represent them. That's intentional. Our two predominating parties exist to live on either side of that center line. If you're a centrist, by and large, what happens in the United States is you sort of oscillate between which party you think is best at the time. And we as a country tend to oscillate between which party is going to sort of best pull us back to the center at the time. Introducing a lot more complication to that introduces a lot more risk into the political system, and that's how you end up empowering very radical vocal minorities, ideological minorities that pose a lot of threat to the country. Bob says that couple was nice. What couple? Mike says I could rebate that the U.S. is basically the EU for racist, but that would not be fair. Well, Michael, other than sort of making sort of mean anecdotal aspersions about people, that would be a ridiculous thing to say. And I'm glad you didn't say it. I'm a little disappointed that you implied it. If we're talking anecdotes, I've spent a lot of time in Europe. There's certainly an attitude of moral authority, pretty unjustified in across a lot of Europe, and certainly at least as much racism, if not profoundly more. I spent a lot of time in Europe. I've never heard more stereotypes about not only other races, What about other brands of European bandied about like it's nothing? I was shocked and appalled during my time in Europe how many mean and nasty, careless stereotypes were thrown about. The Spanish do it this way, and the British do it this way, and the French do it this way. I don't want to hear any lectures about, you know, ethnocentrism or racism or anything like that coming out of Europe, frankly. What I have seen personally appalled me there. I wish they were more self-critical in the way the U.S. is, broadly speaking. And, you know, I wish there were a little bit less attitude coming out of Europe about their sort of moral authority on such issues, because I have not seen that manifested or backed up in person. You know, live through your actions, not through your words, I guess would be broadly what I would recommend to Europe across the board as a collection of countries. Darren says, no, it's true. We're all racist. Bad says, the Overton window. Mike says, lol. Bob says, go party there. Yeah, a lot of places pretty hopping here for during COVID. There's a lot out here. Random says, nice, that trumpet guy is still there. Yeah. Bob says, the whole idea of party is fake. Bat says, press 1 if you're drinking or getting high. Yeah, why don't you guys press 1 if you're drinking or getting high? Why don't you press 1 if you're drinking and 2 if you're getting high? Okay, Bob is laughing. Bob, if you do an LMAO, you actually have to LMAO. That's one of the rules on our stream, is you can't write things like that unless you're actually doing it. Okay, Mr. Schreckman says people hate how U.S. policy is, how slow U.S. policy is to change, but that's a feature by design too. Yeah, that's true. People always talk about the gridlock of the U.S. Gridlock in the U.S. by and large is a feature designed to prevent sort of radical shifting all over the place. You know, we tend to get very idealistic people in politics that want to radically change the system. By and large, the system works well, and people don't want to radically change it. They want to incrementally change it. So the system is designed to facilitate that. Random says, this is an interesting part of town. Yeah, it kind of is. Mike says, well, if the EU's for sissies, then I don't know what you're insinuating. Bob says, whereabouts in Europe? Bob says, you're right. Shrexham says, I've never seen more racism than when I was in China. Well, we can go there. I wasn't going to go that direction because it didn't come up, but Mr. Shrexham makes an interesting point. Mike says, oh yeah, we fucking hate each other. Incredible thing is that we can work together. Bob, are you drinking? Like, what's going on, man? Dude, you rock. Random's given a 2, so random is smoking, I guess. Bad is both drinking. Okay, 11 is 69ing. I'm impressed, 11, that you are managing to both be on the stream and also 69ing at the same time. Ugh. Okay, Mike is 84.92ing. Okay, Bob is partying. Bob's having a good time here. You're allowed to have a good time here. Pat says, what about that last 17th Amendment? Should we repeal it? Pat, I don't know my amendments. What's the 17th Amendment? I don't think we should, by and large, be repealing amendments. What is the 17th Amendment? Bob Jones says, me? I'm on Top Chat again. No, different. I'm on Live Chat. It's telling me I'm on Live Chat. Schreckman says 11's an attention lover. Bob says lol. Dude, where's a party? 17th is senators. What about senators different? The 17th, the Senate of the United States shall be comprised of 2 senators from each state, elected by people thereof for 6 years. Each senator will have 1 vote. No, why would we repeal that? That's a perfectly fine system. I think that's a good system. Okay, Bad says that's where senators started to be elected by the people instead of appointed by the state legislatures. Yeah, what's wrong with that? That seems fine with me. Before that, they were appointed by the state. Yeah, Bad. I don't care. I mean, you know, however we appoint senators is fine. I think the way it's working is just fine. I don't think we need to be changing that willy-nilly right now. I think we have more pressing things in the country. Mike says, I wanted to say that if the EU is for sissies and the US is for racists, but that's clearly not true in both cases. I think by and large, if you want a larger government apparatus, the EU will work better for you. Bob says, yeah, just sweet. That's part of our Constitution. Random says, checking out. Okay, Random. I'm not gonna read that. But yes, feel free to observe on the stream if you want. 11 says the Electoral College should go. 11, do you actually have like sound theory on why the Electoral College should go, or is that just sort of a politically expedient point as it has been for the last 4 years whenever it doesn't happen to work out for one political party? I find the language that people fancy around about the Electoral College and repealing it when they happen to lose an election where the Electoral College doesn't go in their favor incredibly irresponsible and really lame, frankly. The Electoral College has I don't know, it's a system we have. I think it's a system we have for a reason. You know, I think the only critique I might put on the Electoral College is that if we are really asking it to be sort of representative, broadly speaking, of how the Congress works, that we would want to sort of more equitably distribute the half or the portion of the votes we allocate based on population and the proportion of votes we allocate based on states. In other words, the Congress works in 2 equal chambers. The Electoral College devotes 435 of its electors based on the House of Representatives allocations and 100 of its electors based on Senate allocations. I think if you really wanted to make the Electoral College appropriate, you would increase the share decided by the Senate to 435. So, in other words, the Electoral College unfairly privileges states that have large populations. Bad says the Electoral College is there for a reason. Bob says correct. Bad says point is the senators represent the state government, the House represent the people. So Bad, I sort of get the point of doing sort of constitutional theory. I just, that's not sort of where my practical interests lie, by and large. Like, I think tinkering based on the Constitution, as though there's some sort of innate perfection to it, you know, I think we have what we have, and it's generally fine. Mike says the EU Parliament is a joke. Like all other EU institutions, we should reform them into a federation. Maybe then we can get our shit together. Yeah, I don't know a lot about the EU Parliament. The EU has been sort of a mixed success, it seems like. Um, Trying to link so many countries with their own really rich and historic traditions is going to innately be tough and full of all kinds of problems. So, I don't think perfection was a reasonable standard for the EU. And it seems to have done okay. I think a lot of those countries have, their own sort of long-term demographic challenges that will be the greatest threat to their ability to exist in the long term. And stay prosperous. 11 says it's not worked out in many elections. It should be repealed, the Electoral College, so the popular vote winner always wins, no matter. What do you mean it hasn't worked, 11? The point is that the popular vote winner doesn't automatically become. If that were the case, then why would we have the Electoral College? If we wanted the president to be elected by the popular vote, we wouldn't have the Electoral College in the first place. It's not a failing of the Electoral College when some alternative measure of how we might elect the president doesn't coincide with how it elects the president. In fact, that's a test on its ability to be successful, and in a few elections it's worked. Bob's making a face. Bob said, no, that's the opposite. The Electoral College is intended to keep people alive. Pat says, I gotcha. I mean, if you really want to get into the sort of math on, trying to sort of accurately represent the population, I think you would want to be very wary of the echo chambers that get created in large cities. By and large, people vote based on what's in their environment, not what's in their heart. I think one of the sort of subtle geniuses of the Electoral College is that it mitigates against the impacts of, say, 1 million people all living in one place, who all end up believing the same thing because of sort of echo chamber dynamics, as opposed to, say, 1 million people that all come to independent decisions on their own. I think those are things you want to be careful of. Bob says, don't repeal, stupid. Yeah, I think we'd want to just be really careful before we start going down that road. Like, I get people are upset about past election results that didn't go their way, but that's not a reason to change a constitutional system like that. Mike says, there's a thing I envy from the U.S. Pickup trucks, they're hard to find. I suppose. I think one of the really annoying things about the U.S. is the preponderance of really loud vehicles in a lot of the country. Different says, I think only landowners should be able to vote. Do you different? I mean, we have broadened the electorate many times, and it is very interesting the extent to which, we vote for very different sets of folks now than we would have if we were still using the original electorate. Jeanette and I were talking on the Discord the other night about the election of 1920. The election of 1920 was really interesting because it so interestingly parallels the current situation in the sense that it came right on the heels of a pandemic. It came right after a world war, which was a really substantial event, but it also came right on the heels of a lot of terrorism that was happening around the country. There had been major street protests. There was a lot of anarchist unrest. And it pitted basically a candidate who sort of represented the establishment that people were kind of tired of, Woodrow Wilson, who had sort of lost control of the country at that point, and then Warren Harding, who represented sort of moderation and a sort of return to normalcy. And Harding ended up winning that election in an overwhelming landslide, sort of on the normalcy position. But part of the reason he won that election is that it was the first election where women were ever allowed to vote. They came out in record numbers and voted for him overwhelmingly. Now, it just so happens that Warren Harding is, by and large, historically considered to have been the most attractive president, like physically speaking, amongst people of his day, of any that's ever been elected. Would we have ended up with a different result if just men had voted in 1920? It's a very interesting question. Might have changed the course of history. Bad says live music. Yep. Yeah, things are really hopping here, despite the pandemic. Bad says different, yeah, at least have some kind of skin in the game. I think skin in the game is important for elections. I think the idea that everyone should just vote, period, is really irresponsible. I think these get out the vote campaigns trying to get everybody, no matter how much they actually pay attention, to get out and vote, are irresponsible. I think the right to not vote is very important. And I think if people are not paying attention, they, by and large, should not be voting. I think skin in the game. I think there should probably be a living in America tax on everybody, just to kind of get everybody some skin in the game. But I tend to agree with that point. Okay, I don't necessarily agree with the point on tyranny of the majority. Random says the Catholic Church owns massive amounts of land worldwide. I don't think we should select presidents based on the aggregate amount of land. A lot of different people would be winning if we voted based on the amount of land. Random says the Catholic Church owns massive land. Yeah, Bad says people who have nothing will always vote for welfare. Well, generally speaking, as they should. People always vote their self-interest, by and large. And people for whom the self-interest represents, more tools to help them get on their feet, should want to vote for things like that. Christopher says, looks like downtown Columbus is alive tonight, relatively speaking. We're not downtown. We're just north of downtown, in an area of Columbus called the Short North. It's hopping. It's more hopping than I thought it would be in the middle of COVID here. I'm surprised at how many things are really kind of going nuts here. It's pretty impressive. Bob says, right. David says, I don't really. I'm just being contentious. That would be unusual for different. Bob said, lol, come on, man. Shekhem says, women's suffrage was largely responsible for alcohol prohibition. Don't know how true that is. Not that I'm against women's suffrage. No, I think women's suffrage is obviously not a contentious issue, and nor should it be. Oh, except different wants to end it. That was one of the things that Jimmy Kimmel got in trouble for years ago on The Man Show. He did a comedy bit about ending women's suffrage on The Man Show that has gotten him into some trouble in hindsight. Mike says, don't start me on the Catholic Church. Okay, Mike, here's your chance to give us your thoughts on the Catholic Church. I want everybody's thoughts on the Catholic Church. Bob said, what the fuck? Pat said, women have been suffering long enough. Yeah, that was the joke, guys. When Jimmy Kimmel did it. That was how he was able to get people to sign a petition. Bob said, I'd love to get there. Bad says, correct him, yes, it's true. They didn't like their husbands drinking all the time. Hey, 11, are you still on? You guys got quiet all of a sudden. What's going on? Although my neighborhood got quiet too. I turned off onto a side street here and it got a lot quieter. But things are really hopping. Mike says, better not. Better not. Okay, Bob's saying hi again. Bob's having a good night. Christopher says land speculation. Best part to protest. Best part, no protest, just nightlife as it should be. There were a little bit of protests downtown, Christopher. There was a little bit out there. Um, it was, it was just sort of scattered people kind of dancing around and things like that. It seemed like sort of people just sort of camping out there, as opposed to anything big or formal. That's kind of what it seems to have become. There's a lot of, continued graffiti and whatnot. But it's of smaller magnitude than it was, weeks and months back. I don't know when this ends unless somebody sort of really starts enforcing laws that sort of encampment on government property. Bob says nothing here. Bad says I went to Catholic high school. So Bob, tell us. I have some experience with Catholic school as well. Tell us your experience with Catholic school and whether you thought by and large it was a good experience, a bad experience, or neither. Mike says, I think I'm going to take some water. Be right back. Fair enough, Mike. Let's see. Josie says, all thinking, do we want to speak our minds on the Catholic Church? Crickets. Yeah, shocking, guys. Bad says, growing up, Southern Maryland, you can't swing a dead cat without hitting a Catholic. Bad, how much swinging of dead cats were you doing? That's I've never heard that statement, but it's an interesting one. Okay, Bob says, happy, how are you? Okay, Mr. Shrekdom says, I was just thinking, there was too much to type for my thoughts on the Catholic Church. Fair enough. Random says, I was told by my parents to go to Catholic school and church when I was a kid. Now I don't go or follow it anymore. Fair enough, Random. So, it seems like a lot of people who start in Catholic education don't stick around with Catholicism, and then some do. I'm curious sort of what cultivates the distinction. Bob says it was kind of bad, no girls, so it was an all-boys Catholic school. Yeah, I could see that being tough for folks. Bad says, Catholic school was actually pretty cool. We had small classes. You don't have to be Catholic to go there. So did you? What were religion classes like? How often did you go to church? I assume you had uniforms, all that kind of stuff. I've never heard that phrase, Bad. I've never swung a dead cat either. Bob Jones says, W2F. Bad had girls. We had a 98% college acceptance rate. Mike says, yeah, same as Mr. Shrekdom. Bob says, what? WTF, Mr. Shrekdom says, I had Lutheran schooling growing up, which is a different and weird offshoot from Catholic. Yep. Well, Lutheran's not. I mean, it's not. It's a different sect. It's a sect of Protestantism. It's not part of the Catholic Church, certainly. Mike says, I even had baptism, communion, and confirmation. To be honest, I did it just for the gift. What was the gift? Bob said, I love Lutheran people. Okay, that's sort of a weird classification to make. What is unique about Lutheran people? Random says, I got a gold ring for my gift. Wow, okay. Jack says, I went to an all-male Catholic school. Eventually, the intellectually challenged learned there as there wasn't that distraction. Yeah, are you guys in favor or opposed to single-sex education growing up? Is that a good thing or a bad thing for people? Mike says, for the baptism, I don't remember. Communion was a pass, or was a PS3. Confirmation, I got a PS4. Okay, Mike, how old are you? You got a lot of PlayStations. Christopher says, land speculation. Right now, the CNN state-by-state COVID map looks a lot right before the riots took off. Most states either have leveled off or going down now, infection-wise. Yeah, I think that's right. I think, by and large, the spikes we saw in the middle of the summer are tailing off now. I don't really know what to say on COVID anymore. It's like, yeah, a bunch of cases are out there. It's dangerous. People should try to not get it, by and large. Some states are going to be spiking and some states are going to be not spiking. Until we have some kind of vaccine or something, it's going to continue to be out there. And people are going to need to be cognizant of it. I don't really know what else to say about it at this point, though. Like, it's a thing. I don't know what the media seem to be able to keep reporting on relative to COVID. But certainly, like, is it a big issue? Yes. Is it sort of an enduring existential crisis that will, should sort of cripple our economy forever? No. Random says, man, I keep getting censored. YouTube sucks. Different. You should get on the Discord. I'm surprised you're not on the Discord. Different. I think you would add some interesting flavor over there. Kevin says, went to Catholic school. Kids were a pretty close group because of the common enemy, the nuns. So you actually had nuns. Interesting. Did you have like corporal punishment in the school, Kevin? Like, were the nuns hitting you with rulers? Bob says, growing up. Mike says, redacted by the EU Office of Intelligence. Yeah, Mike, you got to be careful. Of all the things where heavy government is certainly felt in the European Union, voicing a lot of opinions about controversial topics is one you don't probably want to be doing a whole lot of. By the way, you guys are watching Land Speculation on YouTube. I appreciate everybody watching. I appreciate all the likes, the subscribes. The subscribes help us out, help you know when we're on. If you turn on your notifications, we come on almost every night between 6 and 7:30, and we cover protests, ducks, election coverage, various topics. We try to make this the most interactive stream on YouTube. And just a reminder about the Discord link in the description. If anyone wants to join that and chat offline, it's a fun place. We got a lot of fun activity there. And also the Duck Fund, if anybody wants to join that, donate to that, that is very much appreciated. That's also linked in the description. It's a PayPal link. COVID is a scam. Okay, I don't think it's a scam, Bob. It's certainly not a scam. COVID is a very dangerous pandemic. You see, this is Governor of Ohio tested negative hours after testing positive. Yeah, that was a big story locally here. I don't know that it's particularly impactful nationally, but the Governor of Ohio, who's sort of an older guy who's been very aggressive on his COVID policies, tested positive yesterday and then tested negative today. Bob Jones says, fuck your vaccine. Does spelling with an F make it more forceful? Bob says no. Bad says yes, uniforms. It was a co-ed uniform or co-ed school. We went to Mass on Wednesday, holy days of obligation, and random assemblies. We took catechism, church history for freshman year, Old and New Testament sophomore year. Okay, so Bad, were you like on board during your education, or were you skeptical? That's it. Then we took Catholic social teaching junior year, and I took an alternative class senior year, philosophy. Interesting. Mr. Shrektum says, I had a teacher that threw chalk erasers at us. Okay, that doesn't seem like that's actual punishment. That seems like a teacher that may just be doing something insane. And you probably report them for that. Jelen says, hey Jelen, gives 2 ducks. So we were kind of in the, kind of here in Columbus, we were kind of in the Short North area, which is a neighborhood kind of north of downtown. We're now walking along 3rd Avenue in Columbus, kind of heading.
Would you like some Kool-Aid?
Sorry, no guys, thanks.
I'm gonna act like you can't do it.
I hate when people do that.
Okay, Mike says redacted.
Doesn't make sense.
Mike says, well, I'm tired of typing redacted. Kevin says, lots of physical abuse. Bob says, hit the thumbs up. Christopher says, land speculation. I am just wondering if COVID starts to die off, then we will see a sudden rise of protests. That's what happened the first time. Media then switched to full riot coverage. I don't know, Christopher. Do you think it's run its course? I kept sort of wondering, like, how is this going to end, or when was it going to end? I think one thing that will, may start to change things here is, as we get into election season, that seems like that may start preoccupying media coverage, and then the protests won't be front and center on the media all the time, and they may not generate as much public energy as much. So, I felt a shift this week in sort of general media sentiment toward the elections and away from either protests or COVID. And I suspect that will continue to build as we go through the conventions here into the fall. Bad says, I've read so many books senior year because I took AP English Language, AP US History, AP Spanish, and H Philosophy. So Bad, how old are you, by the way? I don't think that's a unique dynamic of Catholic school, but I think a lot of schools are really pushing the APs on people now. Bob says SPM, or sorry. Okay, Bob's having a good night, but Bob's having sometimes a little trouble typing. Bat says, I was raised Protestant, but I was really an atheist. Okay. So was your family Protestant? Why did they send you to Catholic school if they were Protestant? Bob Jones, okay. Josefina says, COVID is real. It's harsh for some, but I do question the pandemic part with so many numbers having to be corrected. I also, how New York massively increased the number of deaths in nursing homes. Yeah, I think there's some data now that it under the sort of current math, it wouldn't qualify as a pandemic, but I don't know that for sure. Certainly not something I think anybody wants to get. So regardless of whether it's a pandemic or not, it is not a scam, and people should take it very seriously and try to not get it. If wearing masks helps even nominally, people should do that. Take precautions and try to not get it. It doesn't sound pleasant for most, and it certainly helps other people out if you don't pass it on to them. Bat says, I went to a Baptist school from 2 to 9, 2nd to 9th grade, but I got kicked out. Bob says, hi again. Hey, Bob. Mike says, how did you get kicked out? Okay, Bat is 30. Okay. Yeah, interesting stuff, guys. I have plenty of experience with Catholic school myself, so a lot of the things you guys are saying are not foreign to me. Bad says, it's a long story, but I was dabbling in witchcraft and I drew a pentagram on the blacktop one day. Wait, you got kicked out for drawing a pentagram on the blacktop? Because they thought you were a witch, I guess? That sounds pretty intense. I didn't think they would kick somebody out for that, but maybe. Mike says metal. Bob says question mark, question mark, question mark. Mr. Shrektum says, were you trying to banish the nuns? That's an interesting question. I think a lot of Catholic schools have gone away from the nuns model, though. I think a lot of them used to do that, and that just became too difficult. So certainly now they don't tend to do that as much. Bob Jones says, hey, what happened? Bob, I have no idea. You keep popping in and saying hi out of nowhere. But I'm glad you're here. Bad says that was the last straw, and I mouthed off to the principal. And there's also some boardroom politics. About 5 other kids also left with me. So they were just trying to sort of clean up the student body, it sounds like. I guess we should hit the thing over here. Hey, William. Gotta go doo-doo? Okay, fair enough, William. Glad you're here. Bob says, dude? Yeah, Bob, what is all the dudes in the WTFs? What's going on, man? Dad says, I was in Baptist school. My Catholic friends had nuns, though. Dad says their parents were involved. My grandpa was on the board, and he left too. It was a fiasco, and I set it off. Okay, William, I want a full report on your experience after you get back. Bob, we're just walking around, man. I don't know what you're freaking out about. Are you doing okay? Seems like you're struggling a little bit here. Okay, William's headed there now. God, these loud... Why do people do this with their cars? Like, why does the fact that you live in a quieter community require that people, like, soup up their cars to be, like, excessively loud? Like, what is the philosophy there? I don't get it. Just because it's bad, were you practicing Wiccan? Shrektum says, I think Bob needs a hug. Yeah, Bob might need a hug. Bad says, I didn't go to Catholic school until halfway through 9th grade, and I had to catch up. But I ended up in honors and AP classes. Mike says, what number did he said before? Number about what? Bob's asking what happened again. I don't know, Bob. We're just trying to have a chat here, man. Bad said, just sweetie, yes. But then I got into Satanism and basically became an atheist. Satanism? Really? That's pretty intense. Difference is the cars are made to be fast, loud, as a byproduct. No, some cars are worse than others, different. Mike says, you know the 1-2 number about smoking or drinking? Bad says, I meant a really good friend through Wiccan, though. Bob says, I don't get, where is the guy? What guy are you talking about, Bob? Bad says, I carried a satanic Bible in my backpack all through high school. Okay, Bad, you had a pretty intense experience. Carrying, you were like literally were a Satanist. That sounds pretty intense. Difference is joy of Satanist or Levi type Satanist? Bad says it's not what people think it is. Mike says Satanism, or some, is actually just atheism. The things that Catholic say that atheists are controlled by the devil. So I think it depends what Catholic you ask. I've known a lot of Catholics that I don't think believe that. Bad says, yeah, okay, I don't know what that is in reference to. Love? Okay, different says, okay, different. Bob says, wait, what happened? Okay, Bob, fill us in on what's going on. Why are you freaking out here? You seem to be very confused by the world around you right now. Is everything okay? Are you on something? Are you in a situation where you need some help? Are you confused by what we're streaming? What's going on? How can we help? Bat says, oh yeah, I was showing it to friends to freak them out. Mike says, some atheists call themselves Satanists just to troll Catholics. Bad says, I also read some Crowley. Mike says, I know some. I was a dumb teenager. Okay, I don't know who these people are that you were reading, Bad, but it sounds like you were quite rebellious. Everybody's dumb as a teenager, so that's fair. Bob says, can you please explain what happened here? Bob needed to press 1 and 2 repeatedly on the half question. Oh, okay, yeah. I got you, Joe Sweeta. So we had asked a question earlier. Press 1 if you were drinking, and number 2 if you were on something. Not sure what's going on with Bob right now. But Bob, we're walking around trying to hang out with you guys. That's about the best explanation I can give you. Short of that, I don't know how to answer what's happening. We're talking a little bit about... So generally speaking, would you guys say high school was a good experience or a bad experience for you? I feel like people have very divergent descriptions of their high school years. Most people, by and large, seem to not want to repeat their high school years. But then every once in a while you meet somebody for whom that was like the best time of their life. So I'm curious, how that works out for different folks. All right. Mike says, not caring, honestly. Okay, I don't know what that's in reference to. William's back. Okay, hey, William. Xlax seems not to be working. Oh, well, maybe tomorrow. So, William, in terms of laxatives, Xlax might be the most popular one, but it's actually not. What you probably need is a bulking laxative, one that's going to sort of add water to your system and help things just kind of flow better. Xlax is designed to just kind of turn everything into mush, so you might need to try a different product, or just try drinking a lot of water, William. That'll help too. David says, did you try rocking back and forth? Yeah, try different positions that work for you. Bad says, high school was actually good for me. My teachers respected me and I had fun. Private school is the way to go. I think teachers tend to agree with that too. Sometimes they get paid less in private school, but I think by and large for them, the experience of teaching private school tends to be more pleasant. Bad says, I was never a bad person. Josuita, couldn't tell you. 9th grade 3 times. All 3 times went in the front door and out the back. Wow, okay, that's a lot of 9th grade, Josuita. Bob Bob says, huh? Where is our friend? Different says, wow, Land really knows his laxatives. I've actually never taken one, Different. Bob says, where's our friend? William says, okay, thank you. Yeah, let us know how it goes, William. We need regular updates here. Bob is still having a hard time here. Yeah, Bob, I don't know how to help you. It seems like you're struggling a lot here, and I just don't know how to help you. All right, okay, what's next? William, I never rock side to side. Or I even rock side to side, okay. Bad says, one of my teachers printed out an entire book on Charles Manson because she thought I would be interested. So your teachers were trying to get you into cults. That sounds a little bit problematic. I don't like the use of the word problematic, but that does sound problematic. I don't know why there's no sidewalk here, but there's no sidewalk here. So we're gonna have to live without a sidewalk for a little bit. Bob says, can someone explain this situation? Bob's situation is that Bob seems to have no idea what's going on, and it doesn't seem like it's that complicated of a situation. Okay, Bad says, yes, private school teachers get paid less. Well, usually at private school they negotiate their salaries, so it's not an across-the-board thing. William says, what about Bob? We don't know what's going on with Bob, William. Just says, poor Bob. What about Bob? It was an okay movie. Bad says, most of my teachers were military wives or had high-income husbands, but some of them had to work summer jobs. Okay, interesting. Bob says, could you explain what this is? Bob, can you be a little more explicit in what you would ask, what you'd like us to explain? You seem very confused. You don't seem to have any good explanation for what is confusing you, though. William is saying lol. Different says it's a live stream, Bob. Bad. No, not like that. Bob says, I know that. Is he okay? What? Okay, Different says he's okay. Okay. Yeah, thanks, Different, for clearing things up here. I should have known you would be able to get through to Bob here. We are all generally doing fine here. Not a big fan of these sidewalks where they have telephone poles right in the middle of the sidewalk. That seems like a bad design. Yeah, thanks, Different. Mike says, how much you walked, man? Not that much today. We've been walking continuously here for now 2 hours and 15 minutes at a rate of about 1 mile every 20 minutes. That means probably we have walked about 7 miles. So that's not particularly unusual for us. Bad says, Bob, say pineapple if you need help. William says, maybe Bob is a little constipated. Yeah, well, William is your guy if you need tips there, it sounds like. I'm wondering if we could help William out here. If anybody has any tips, or sometimes like running water can help. Pineapple's the safe word? Okay. Okay, yeah, so... Okay, Bob's fine. Okay. Mike says, how your day been? Let's talk about more normal stuff. How's my day been? It was really busy. Generally, it's been fine. I never know how to answer that question in public. Like, how's your day? Like, I'm not going to tell most people that ask that question how my day's actually been. So the answer's always like fine, and then their answer's always fine. And then it's like, so what have you been up to? Not that much. How about you? Not that much. And then you can only talk about like the weather or something else, and it's real boring. So I don't know. Anything interesting going on with you, Mike? Bob said, what happened? Wait, what happened to land speculation? Says Bob. Bob, can you not hear me? I'm right here. Bad said, as he walks across the land, we can speculate. Yes, that's right. Bad. Lucita says, what? Are you making safe words for Bob? Yes. Apparently we have safe words for Bob. Bob, if you're in trouble, just say the safe word. Why is the camera fixed in the same place? It's not, Bob. You might need to refresh your stream. The camera is certainly not fixed on the same place. William says, yeah, I need toilet help. Yeah. Okay, yeah, Mike is trying to help Bob and also knows the feeling of needing toilet help. William, I tried that little foot stand once. I see that Alan Harper uses one. I don't know who Alan Harper is, but yeah, I mean, a lot of people think that's a more healthy way to fully evacuate your bowels, to use a stand like that. Bad says it's very important to have a safe word. Yes, particularly if you're engaged in certain activities. Bob says, no problem. WTF. Okay, William might be in trouble. William, are you in trouble? Or are you just telling Bob the safe word? Come on, man. No, was helping Bob. Okay. Beth says lol. Bob says sorry. All right, guys. What else is going on? I guess we didn't really address what everyone's day was. Beth said, so how about that local sports team? A lot of sports teams aren't playing right now. Although actually I guess a lot are right now because we're jamming NHL playoffs, NBA playoffs, and a consolidated baseball season all into the end of summer here. So that local sports team, I don't know. Depends on who your local sports team is. Bob says, come on, man. Okay, Mike is going to go now. All right, Mike. I guess we will hopefully see you later then. But I hope you come back. I hope you're subscribed, Mike. I hope we'll see you again. You've been a nice addition. Different says, what's everyone's least favorite? Okay, Different. I think we're not going to talk about that conversation topic. That seems like not a topic we should be going down. Yours is Scientology. So Different. We've talked about Scientology before. I think generally we are I just find it intriguing. Okay, different. You need to curtail that topic. Bad says, I always have a good conversation when the Mormons come to my door. Okay. All right. Different. I assume you brought that up intentionally right as I was walking behind someone who was very slow in front of me. So thank you for making my life very awkward just there. Okay. Bad says, I've known some really cool Mormons. Bob Jones says, what is up with that? We are on the ground. Yeah, sometimes I gotta point the camera down, guys, to get around something. Says, yeah, man, I'm gonna go play video games. Okay, fair enough, Bad. Thanks for tuning in. Good seeing you. Mr. Schreckham says, I think Bob has drank so much he's on the ground. Yeah, it sounds like perhaps. William saying lol. Hey, Willie. I can't really figure out what's going on with Bob right now. Bob is having an interesting time. I hope he's all right. I wish I knew what to do to help him a little bit more. Yeah, thanks, Bad. Hope we'll see you around again soon. Bob took acid, Different says? Yes, perhaps he did. Bob says, no, I'm here. Yeah, these are kind of the telltale effects of acid. This is kind of what happens if you stop sort of knowing where you are. Everything seems kind of amazing and incomprehensible. I was worried about you, says Bob. Bob, why are you worried about us? We're doing fine, Bob. But I appreciate that people are looking out for us. If anything were to happen to me, you guys would be my witnesses, so I do appreciate that. Just a reminder, guys, about the Discord link in the description. If anyone wants to join that to chat offline, I would encourage everybody to do that. Okay, what else is going on? Okay, Bob says okay. Let's see what else. Looks like we've mostly exhausted the news cycle. Joe Biden was in hot water today. We still don't know what happened in Beirut. The protests seem to, by and large, be dying down, unless they're not. Donald Trump gave a speech tonight. Proposed an executive order for a bunch of free stuff for people, including rent coverage and whatnot. The election is heating up. A couple of polls have shown Donald Trump closer in the last few days, although still trailing pretty substantially. Joe Biden made a gaffe. That's kind of the main stuff that's going on. Okay, Bob says, okay, what are you saying, Bob? Utah? Yeah, I can't figure it out, Bob. You're talking a little incomprehensibly tonight, but hopefully you'll be back in a more normal state sometime. Okay, Just Sweeta says, protests not dying down. Portland, they attacked little old ladies in a neighborhood house. Links for the Discord. It's very sad. Okay, interesting, Joe Sweeta. I've got a lot of Discord stuff to catch up on myself, but interesting. Let's see. Bob says, okay. William says, I think he meant, yeah, okay. Fair enough. Okay, guys. It's getting pretty dark out. I am probably going to wrap up the stream here momentarily. But I do appreciate you guys all tuning in tonight. Thanks for spending some of your Friday with us. Just a reminder to please like and subscribe if you have not already. And if you are subscribed, please turn on your notifications to make sure they're telling you when we are on. Generally, we're based in Washington, D.C. We come on between 6 and 7:30 in the evenings and stay on until it gets dark, and sometimes later. We would love to see you guys all again. We do protests, ducks, election stuff, random chatter like this. We've helped William with his bowel issues and other things. And we're gonna have to check on Bob the next time we're around. I hope Bob is doing all right tonight. And just a reminder about the Discord link in the description. Also the Duck Fund link if anybody feels like financially supporting this stream and resources for the ducks would be very helpful. Different says, thanks, Land, good stream. Bob's still confused. William's telling us to be safe. Yeah, thanks, William. Different. Just Sweeta, you and Mrs. Land, take care. Enjoy the weekend. See you soon. Take care, Bob. Okay, Bob's telling us, God bless. Yeah, thanks, Bob. All right, guys, we're going to probably sign off here. And thank you guys all for tuning in and wish you all a good night. And we'll see you on the next one of these sometime soon. Please subscribe if you haven't. Different, you're wrong.